services for Peninsula Clean Energy. Peninsula Clean Energy is the community choice energy provider currently for San Mateo County, but we are expanding service to Los Banos, which is why we're here tonight to talk a little bit about Peninsula Clean Energy coming to Los Banos, and in particular to talk about what that means for folks who have a solar system, because the billing is already, I know, a little complicated with PG&E, but you know, hopefully we can answer some of those questions for folks, what that means for you with Peninsula Clean Energy. Also reassure you that having Peninsula Clean Energy as your generation provider is actually going to be a real benefit for those of you who already made that investment into solar. I have one of our new colleagues who joined Peninsula Clean Energy just a few months ago, Sandra Benetti. For those folks who may be familiar with city staff in Los Banos, Sandra worked for the city of Los Banos for a lot of years, I think about 15 years before joining Peninsula Clean Energy, and we're really lucky to have her on board. So she's the local staff member for Peninsula Clean Energy in Los Banos. So we have her here tonight. I'm going to be doing most of the presentation, but wanted to have Sandra available so you guys know that she's a local resource. And she's someone you can go to with any questions about enrollment in general. I've got our contact information at the end of the presentation to take down for both Sandra and for Peninsula Clean Energy if you have follow-up questions specific to solar. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation because we do have quite a bit to go through. Just as a preemptive warning, there's a lot of technical stuff we're going to talk about with net metering, and it's okay if it doesn't make sense or it's a little bit confusing. Happy to take questions from folks individually. I'll pause during the presentation, try to make sure we get any questions along the way. We do have a Q&A question box that you can submit things to. The chat might also be open as well for folks. So wherever it makes sense for you to drop your question, if you have one along the way, go ahead and put it in there and we will get to it tonight, or if we need to do some follow-up with you, we can do that. We'll make sure to do that as well afterwards. So let me get our presentation up and get started with that. So I'm going to start tonight talking a little bit about first just Peninsula Clean Energy intro, and then we're going to dig into more specifics about net metering. So just as a little bit of a background, Peninsula Clean Energy initially launched in 2016 as an initiative of the County of San Mateo's Sustainability Department. We serve all 20 cities in San Mateo County and the unincorporated parts of San Mateo County currently. Since our operation, we've saved customers in San Mateo County cumulatively about $72 million in terms of lower energy costs, what they would have otherwise paid PG&E. We've also reduced emissions throughout the county quite significantly with our energy that we're providing. Who we are as an agency: Community Choice Aggregation, CCA, or Community Choice Energy Provider, CCE. They're both interchangeable terms. It's something that was established in the California legislature quite a few years ago. It was actually close to 20 years ago, right after, for folks that have been in California for a long time, like myself, you may have remembered the rolling blackouts that happened in the early 2000s of PG&E. And the original deregulation of the energy market in California that started in the late 90s. That was shut down after that rolling blackout period. But as an answer, as a way to make an opportunity for folks to kind of sustainably or, in a way that wasn't going to be as disruptive as the original market deregulation provision was, there was some legislation passed that said that the alternative model would be a community choice aggregation, where the entire community came together and went with an alternative energy provider. That's the initial genesis of CCAs. So why, why does this make sense? Who are we? We are a trusted public agency. We're a not-for-profit organization. So not a nonprofit, but a not-for-profit. So we're still a business operation. We still have, do commercial transactions, in the energy space to negotiate power contracts, buy and sell power. But we don't operate in a profit model. We don't have a set of shareholders that we're trying to earn a return on for. Our shareholders are our customers. So our motivation is 100% to provide electricity at the lowest price possible with the cleanest energy available for all of our customers. We've been doing that very successfully in San Mateo County since 2016, and we're now going to be making that available to customers in Los Banos starting in April of this year. We're governed by elected officials. There's representation from each of our member cities. City of Los Banos has a spot on our board. Your Mayor Tom Faria joined our board last year and has been an active board member now for over a year, has an equal voting share as any other city in San Mateo County. So you're well represented on our board currently and will continue to be so going forward. Los Banos in Peninsula Clean Energy, how did we get here? So in October of 2020, after many months of study and review by city officials, some outside consultants, technical experts, the City of Los Banos voted to join Peninsula Clean Energy. The mayor, as I mentioned, joined our board in November of 2020, and then we went through the more than year-long process to really prepare for this enrollment that's going to start in April of 22, filing, lots of paperwork, procuring resources, hiring additional staff like Sandra. So just getting everything ready to be able to launch service to you folks in April. What was the thing that sort of initially brought us together was this solar array. Peninsula Clean Energy had contracted to take power from this solar installation that was built recently just outside of the city of Los Banos. When we were out there doing the groundbreaking a couple years ago, had some conversations with local officials in Los Banos. Folks were really excited about the idea of this very large renewable energy facility that was going to be generating clean energy right outside of town. Wanted to know more about how could they get that energy delivered to their residents in Los Banos, and that's really where the conversation started. So how do we work? What do we do? As a community energy provider, how do we get the electricity to you? Your electricity right now is made up of a couple different components. There's the actual energy, which is the generation, which is what we're talking about here, which is generated from a variety of different resources, wind, solar, hydroelectric power, a little bit of biomass, a little bit of other, mixed renewables in there, which is where we're getting our resources at now. We still leverage a relationship with PG&E to bring the electricity to you. So PG&E, you're still going to get a PG&E bill. PG&E is still going to be maintaining all of the hard assets like transmission lines, meters. They're still going to come out there and read your meter every month. But the power that's going to be coming to your home, Peninsula Clean Energy is going to be purchasing that and making sure that it gets delivered to you by PG&E, and you as the end customer will be taking that power. Similar arrangement still works when you're generating extra electricity from your home. So if you're ever generating extra electricity and you've got electricity going the other way from your house, back onto the grid, still gonna be PG&E's grid, but the transactions for the energy part of it will be with Peninsula Clean Energy. So we're going to give you credits for our side of the bill, the generation costs. PG&E is going to give you some credits for their side of the bill. But we've actually got a really great program that we'll get into a little bit more detail out as we go on about how our net metering program is actually better. It's just straight out better for customers than PG&E's program. So a couple things to note. Right now, when we do launch service, you will have choices. Eco Plus is our default option that all customers would be automatically enrolled in. It's a product that currently is 50% renewable. It's a clean energy, almost 100% carbon free, and it costs a little bit less. So we price that product so that it's about 5% less than what PG&E would otherwise be charging you. So when you calculate, all of the fees and charges together, those savings of being an Eco Plus Peninsula Clean Energy customer is a little bit less. So you can pay a little bit less than what you would have paid if you were taking all of your services from PG&E like you do now. We have another product called Eco 100, which some folks choose to upgrade to. It's a 100% renewable energy product sourced from California wind and solar facilities exclusively. And it costs a little bit more, $4 or $5 a month, for the average household if you want to sign on to this product, because it costs a little bit more. It's a 1 cent per kilowatt hour surcharge over the Eco Plus program. But for solar customers, the really great thing for solar customers is if you stay on the Eco Plus, and this is actually what I recommend for most solar customers, is to just stay on the Eco Plus program. Unless you want to be really, really sure that every kilowatt hour you consume is 100% renewable, then go ahead and opt out to Eco 100. But if you stay on the Eco Plus program as a solar customer, what happens is when you're generating extra electricity and you put it back on the grid, we're actually going to compensate you for that at the Eco 100 rate. And when you buy electricity, you're going to buy it at the lower Eco Plus rate. So you get to buy low, sell high. I think it's a great benefit for our solar customers. There is also the option to opt out. You do not have to be a Peninsula Clean Energy customer if you do not want to be one. You have choices. You can say, you know what, this sounds complicated and a little confusing and I don't know about it. I think I'd just like to stay with PG&E for all of my services. I know that I'm going to pay a little bit more, but I'm familiar with that and I'm comfortable with it. And so that's what I want to do. That is a valid choice for you. And talk a little bit more about your options for opting out. But that is an option if that's what you'd like to do so. We would like to talk to you about that if that's what you want to do, because we want to make sure that we could answer any questions that you had that were maybe hesitate, making you want to choose that or making you lean that direction. Really, we're here to serve, the city of Los Banos and get everyone the best energy for the best price possible. So if you are having hesitations, reach out to Sandra, reach out to myself. We can love to talk you through it, but it is a choice. You can opt out if you want to. And just to be clear, when we're providing service, you're still going to be eligible for any discount programs that you're already enrolled in, or you may enroll in going forward. So if you're currently a CARE customer with PG&E, getting that discount, or a FAIR customer getting that discount on that bill, that discount will stay if you take service with Peninsula Clean Energy. There will be no change in that discount. So that program will stay. You will stay enrolled in getting those discounts from PG&E. Those discounts are actually provided only on the transmission and distribution side of the service. So when Peninsula Clean Energy takes over the generation piece, we'll substitute in our energy at a lower price, and you'll still get the discounts that you were getting from PG&E on their side of the bill. We also have a lot of things planned for City of Los Banos customers. So we have programs that we're going to be launching, things that you can take advantage of, some EV rebates, some solar plus storage programs, things that can be really beneficial for you if you would like to, continue to participate in our program. I'm not going to go over all of those tonight. Sandra's going to be doing other presentations in the community about that if you want to follow along and look for one of those, or, can go to our website. We have some of that information listed as well, but just wanted to highlight that, currently. I don't know if we've got any questions so far, but I wanted to just sort of take a pause there real quick and see if you've got any questions. I don't think so. Okay, well, we'll keep going forward. Okay, and so to talk a little bit about what we're really here to talk about tonight is the solar energy, solar net energy metering. So folks that are on the line here, assuming most of you joined us because you heard about our presentation, you are an existing solar customer, and you wanted to find out a little bit more about what this means for you with joining Peninsula Clean Energy. Net energy metering, as you are probably already familiar with, is it's a way of earning credits. Oh, it looks like we've got a question here. Is the program dependent on the enrollment rate or percent, especially if there's an opt-out option? No, we're going to continue to offer this program to anyone in, we've got some folks that might be, there we go. We're going to continue to offer this program to all of Los Banos, regardless of whether or not, certain percentage of customers opt out. We expect some customers to opt out. In Peninsula Clean Energy's primary territory in San Mateo County, we have about 3% opt-out rate. We are serving majority of San Mateo County, but we do have a handful of customers that decided to opt out, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But we're not dependent on. We will continue to offer service in Los Banos regardless of what the opt-out looks like. And will the presentation be available to us? I think the question is, yeah, we're recording this right now, so we are going to have this available later. You can download it later, and we will offer some more presentations going forward. This is the first solar presentation we've done for Los Banos, so we will be scheduling a few more of them. Okay, let's move on. So wanted to talk a little bit about the enrollment schedule specifically for net metering customers. So we will be enrolling a majority of Los Banos in April of 2022. And that will be for anyone who doesn't have a solar system, any of the businesses, any of the customers who, municipal accounts, anyone who's not a solar customer is going to enroll in April of 2022. We will also be rolling a batch of the solar customers in April 2022. Anyone who has a net metering true-up that's happening in January, February, March, or April, those customers will enroll in April of 2022. Everyone whose true-up month is after that will enroll during their true-up month. So for those folks who have a true-up happening now until April, you will have another true-up in April when you become a Peninsula Clean Energy customer, and then April will be your new true-up month with PG&E. Everyone whose true-up month is currently after April will have a true-up during their true-up month. So you'll do your annual true-up with PG&E, and then you will transition to Peninsula Clean Energy service. And we scheduled it in this way so that we could minimize the disruption, for the net metering customers. You have an annual trip that's happening. We want to, schedule our service to start when you're having that trip to minimize sort of the disruption in your service. You will also, everyone who in Los Banos is going to be getting notices 30 and 60 days before, 60 and 30 days before enrollment, and then 30 and 60 days after enrollment. So for that first batch of customers that are enrolling in April of 2022, those enrollment notices introducing Peninsula Clean Energy, introducing the process for enrollment, the options for opting out, those letters are going to start hitting your mailbox in February. Look for them within probably the second or third week in February is when you will get those first notices in your mailbox. Everyone else who has a trip after April, just move the schedule for the enrollment notices along so that you get, starting 60 days before, you'll start getting you get your first notice, you'll get notice number 1, notice number 2, enrollment month, and then 2 post-enrollment notices. And it looks like we've got another question here. Yeah, I'm going to hold this NEM 2.0 question for a second. I will come back to that. it's a fair question, but I'm going to address a little bit of that later, so I'm going to come back to it. And then Joe, you have another, I'm going to answer your question, Joe, as well about the medical baseline. I'll come back to that in a second. So those are great questions. We'll get to it. Just want to talk a little bit about the difference between net energy metering with PG&E versus Peninsula Clean Energy, sort of the primary differences between the programs. So with the PG&E NEM program, you have that approximately $10 a month minimum delivery fee that you have to pay every month, regardless of whether you're consuming extra electricity or you're generating extra electricity. Your generation charges and all other charges are settled annually during your your true-up month. So even though you might be paying only that $10 a month as you go, many folks have a large true-up that happens during their true-up month. So $10, $10, $10, and all of a sudden it's $1,000, right? I'm sure that's something some of you guys have probably experienced that with PG&E. You get a retail credit for kilowatt hours generated up to an annual net zero. And if you're not someone who generates extra kilowatt hours overall with PG&E, this probably won't make sense to you. But if you're someone who regularly generates more solar energy than you use, and you get a payout from PG&E at your true-up time, then this might make sense. Because what happens is those extra kilowatt hours past the net zero, get recalculated at a avoided cost generation rate called the net surplus compensation, NSC. Very technical, I'm sorry, I know. But this is the world we live in with the PG&E NEM program. It gets recalculated to this much lower rate of approximately 4 cents a kilowatt hour. It actually fluctuates every month, and I just looked up what the recent pricing was for the last few months, and it's been hovering around 4 cents. So anyways, and then with Peninsula Clean Energy, the difference, I mean, you're still going to have that same $10 monthly minimum, approximately $10 monthly minimum with PG&E. So that's not going to change because that's for your transmission and distribution minimum grid charges. Your generation charges are going to get settled monthly with Peninsula Clean Energy, meaning that if you use more energy in a month than your solar system produces, you are going to get a bill for those kilowatt hours that you consumed extra during that month. If you generate more energy than you use in a particular billing cycle, those kilowatt hours are going to get credited, and that credit balance is going to get added to your Peninsula Clean Energy, net metering, escrow account, and you're going to keep that balance at that retail credit going forward. We're not going to recalculate it or discount it at some other time. It's going to stay at that retail credit that you generated to that going forward to offset any future charges. And when we do that monthly settlement, we give a bonus, like I mentioned before, that bonus 1 cent per kilowatt hour payment for any extra kilowatt hours you generate. And I've got examples of this later on so I can show you. And then we do an annual cash out after the April billing cycle. So after the April billing cycle, we do an annual cash out. So if you have more than $100 in credit on your account after the April billing cycle, we actually are going to cut you a check for that, and we'll send it to you. We send those checks out. I would try to get them all out in May. Sometimes they go out in June a little bit. Depends on when we get the settlements from PG&E for those billing cycles. But if you get to April and you have a $300 credit on your account in April, we're going to send you $300. We're not going to recalculate that at a lower rate. Okay, we've got some more questions here. Let's see. Kristen, looks like we're great. Is there a price? Yeah, so we've got some good questions coming on here about price differentials. Let me just get to the examples that might answer some of those questions. So let me give an example here. Your sort of Bill point out like the monthly settlement process. So energy is paid for in the month it's consumed. That credits and the excess generations are carried forward into future months. And I put here, if you're a net consumer, which means you're consistently consuming more electricity than your solar system's generating, Their total costs are going to be less with Peninsula Clean Energy 95+% of the time. I actually have not found an example. I have not found an example where Peninsula Clean Energy costs more. But I put this 95% 5+% in as a caveat, just in case, because there might be some weird corner case scenario that I have not encountered yet, where somebody actually did better on the PG&E side, but I can't find it. I have not found it yet. And then if you're a net producer, so you're someone who regularly generates more electricity than you consume, the payback is always going to be higher because we do not discount that payback. So here are the main benefits. We pay you a higher rate for that surplus electricity. The credits will roll over and are never discounted. That annual cash out, after the April billing cycle, that money, that's your money, that's your cash money. If by chance I say it's over $100, if it's under $100, we don't zero that out. We just roll that credit forward. So you just get to roll it over. So let's say, you get past April and it was $75 credit on your account. We're just going to keep that credit going forward. Next month or next year, maybe the credit's $150 now in your account. Then we're going to send you that check for $150. I think this is one of the best benefits here is the lower annual true-up bill with PG&E for the net consumers. So if you recall when I talked about before, a lot of folks right now, they have that $10 a month bill, and then they get hit with a really big bill from PG&E. Maybe it's I've seen $1,000 bills, $1,500 bills, $2,000 bills. Sometimes it's $300 bills. It really just depends on how your solar system was sized, how you're using energy in your home, and sort of where the math works out in the end. If you're one of those customers right now that gets a true-up bill from PG&E, you will still end up getting a true-up bill from PG&E at the end of the year, but it's going to be a much lower true-up bill because you're going to have paid for some of that energy ahead of time because you're going to be paying it monthly to us when you consume that electricity. So you're only going to have to settle the PG&E side of the bill because you're already going to have paid for the Peninsula Clean Energy side of the bill. So instead of $1,000 true-up with PG&E, it might be a $600 bill with PG&E instead. And I really think that that's a great benefit for folks who are regularly consuming more electricity than they're producing. So you don't have to just get hit with this astronomically large bill once a year. You can pay a little bit as you go, with Peninsula Clean Energy essentially. And let's see. And then this is what the too long, didn't read Cliff Notes version here. Buy low and sell high. You get to buy at a lower rate or Eco Plus rate, and you get to sell it high at our Eco 100 rate. And I think that that's really the best benefit in town. So before I move on to an actual example, let me look back at some of these questions. So Jerry asked about, I'm a NEM 2.0 customer. Are we grandfathered or are we going into NEM 3? Do we have a choice? So Jerry, I'm going to answer this question. Right now, the NEM 3 process is still sort of in debate. It has not been settled on yet with the CPUC. Whatever they end up passing will eventually apply to everyone, but it will only, but as a NEM 2.0 customer, you will be, the way that the proposal is right now is you will stay in your NEM 2.0 status for 15 years past your current interconnection date. So if you, turned your solar system on in 2017, 2018, that's really when the NEM 2.0 started, like 2017, 2018. That's when you turn your solar system on, you're still going to be part of NEM 2.0 until, 2033. Yeah, like 2033, right? It's a while. It's a while. So, and then Joe, you have a question here about the medical, if you're already on medical savings for health, will a person also be able to expand for solar? So this is a this is an interesting question. So there is a medical baseline program for customers who, if you are using a high-use electricity device in your home, you can get a higher baseline amount of electricity. That really only applies to the tariff rate, the E1 flat rate, where that medical baseline sort of exemption happens. And if you're going to install a solar system, you actually have to take service on a time of use rate schedule. So there's a bit of a mismatch there with the medical baseline exemption and the time of use rate schedule. You can still install a solar system, and it still might be a good idea for you to do that, depending on the size of the solar system and what you're looking to offset. But that would be a calculation that is a little bit more advanced than I can do on the live tonight. And it really would involve consulting with your solar contractor. So I'll say that, yes, you could install that, but you can't keep the medical baseline exemption for electric service and have a solar system, because they don't match. There is a medical baseline exemption for gas service as well, I believe, so depending on what sort of devices you're using in your home and what kind of medical exemption you have, you could still get an exemption on the gas side, but not on the electric. Let's see. Let's see. Is there a price difference between peak and off-peak rates? Yeah, so there is a price difference between peak and off-peak rates. Our rate schedules, we model our rate schedules after PG&E's rate schedule. So we still follow the same structure that PG&E has for their rate schedules, but our costs are less. So that when you're buying electricity, you know, it's lower. If you're selling electricity, and you might think like, oh, well, I could sell it back to PG&E at this higher peak rate, and Peninsula Clean Energy's peak rate is lower. Yes and no, because yes, their peak rate is higher, and you're selling it back at that peak rate, but they're not going to credit you that retail rate indefinitely like we do. There's also, in the majority of cases, our Eco 100 bonus is going to cross over the hump between, you know, our Eco Plus rate and PG&E's flat generation rate. So it still works out better to be a Peninsula Clean Energy customer. And then Joe asked about, will having any brownout or blackout, or I think you're asking if there's any impact to brownouts or blackouts with our service. And no, the impact, any brownouts or blackouts that may happen are actually out of our control, because that's part of the distribution system. So that is still on PG&E with regards to brownouts, blackouts, anything that's involved with the distribution grid, with the wires and transmitting of electricity. That is still on PG&E's side and in their control. We do not control that. But, you know, having our service doesn't make any of those scenarios more likely. It's just, those things are going to happen or not going to happen at the same rate that they would happen regardless of who's providing the generation service, Peninsula Clean Energy or PG&E. So I hope that answered that question. And then Jerry's got another question here. PCE generates electricity, no longer PG&E. Will this do away with time of use or stay the same? So there's two. It's a good question, Jerry. But it's the time of use is still there, because the rate structure is still there, because there are two components to your rates. In that one rate that you're getting from PG&E right now, it's called a bundled rate, and it has components of it that are based on that are charging you for the distribution grid, the transmission, delivery, the infrastructure, and then there's another part of that charge that's a sort of allocated to the actual energy. So what we're doing here is we're splitting that bundled rate into two independent separate components. So PG&E is still going to charge their part for transmission and distribution, and there's definitely time of use components around the costs of when to deliver power and why, and it being more expensive to schedule and deliver power at a particular time frame, because that impacts the grid and that impacts, you know, infrastructure when demand is high. So that costs more. So that is still going to exist, you know, on PG&E's side of the bill. On our side of the bill, there are some impacts on the generation component. It's a little bit less extreme. I mean, there are peak and off-peak and part peak rates, and we do mirror that just to for simplicity's sake and just to help sort of make the rates make sense for folks. But to do a true apples to apples comparison and delivery of energy. The differential on the generation side that we're providing is not as extreme as it is on PG&E side, and I think that might be too technical of an answer, but I'm happy to dive into that with you later if you want to take a when we get into actually providing service. So I'm gonna pause there on the questions because I think we got most of those in, and we move on with the presentation. So okay. There we go. Let's see. So here's just an example of like the summary part of your bill. We just sort of extrapolated this from a different bill to sort of show you what the summary charge is. So on that first page of your bill that you get from PG&E, you'll have a sort of a schedule like this mapped out. Right now on your bill, if you look at it, it'll say, this amount due previous statement, your payment received, unpaid balance, and then it'll say, PG&E electric charges, I think is what it says right now for bundled customers. What it's going to say when Peninsula Clean Energy, starts providing services, it's going to be split into two lines now. It's going to have PG&E, electric delivery charges, and then, sorry, went back. I didn't mean to do that. PG&E electric delivery charges, and then, this extra line here is going to say Peninsula Clean Energy electric generation charges. Really, and why we're trying to, sort of get out in front of this right now for folks is because if you didn't know any better, you might look at this and be like, oh, what's this extra charge that I have now from Peninsula Clean Energy? Reasonable assumption. It's not actually an extra charge. It's a splitting up of the charges. So PG&E is going to still have their charges, and then we're going to have our charges. But it's not an extra charge. It's just splitting what used to be one charge into two line items, essentially. And then you still have the gas charges. So I've got a sample net energy metering bill here, and this is from a resident we have up in San Mateo County. Because we don't have any current residents in Los Banos. We'll make up some bill samples for Los Banos customers as soon as we get folks enrolled. But right now, just bear with us for the Redwood City example. So a lot of you probably have a statement like this. This isn't actually going to be indicative of everybody's net metering statement because there's a lot of varieties of net metering statements. I included a couple here, but I did not include every one because it's too many. But a couple that should be most common. This is like the the summary page for net metering customer. You have this that same sort of chart at the top there, and then you have this little statement on the bottom here telling you about your running, sort of total for net energy metering and what your projected true-up amount is as of this date, et cetera, et cetera. So if we drill down into this a little bit right here, highlighting our component of the bill, that PG&E, that same sort of approximate $10 a month for PG&E that you were seeing previously, but now you're also going to see this customer is a consumer this month. They bought more electricity, or they consumed more electricity than they produced. So now they're also going to have a charge for the generation part for Peninsula Clean Energy, $24. So we're going to walk through the details of this. So this is the sort of details page from PG&E showing the customer being a net consumer. In this current month, they actually consumed 350 kilowatt hours, but PG&E is only charging their minimum grid charges and then running the total the extra charges up that they would do on the true-up side, but you only have to pay that minimum $10 a month currently to PG&E. Here you go, right? So here's the net total usage, 30 days at this daily rate, for minimum grid connection fee, $10.35. But, and then here's the details. So here's the details. It gets a little bit complicated, right? Here's the bundled charge up top here, tier 1, you know, and tier 2. This is the bundled charge. This is what PG&E charges for this particular rate schedule, E1. And this is this 20 cents per kilowatt hour and this 27 cents per kilowatt hour. These include lots of stuff in that one rate: transmission, distribution, and generation. Because Peninsula Clean Energy is now providing generation service for this customer, PG&E has to back out their generation charges. They charged you for it up here already in the top line, and now they have to give this generation credit because oh shoot, my battery is low on my computer. I'll try to speed this up. They have to give you this credit here because it backed out. If you don't, because they can't charge you that anymore, because now we're going to charge it. So they give you this credit line here. It looks kind of confusing. Then they add in some extra charges, the PCIA, franchise fee. These are surcharges that PG&E has for customers when you take service from a third party. But you know, we account for that when we do our rate making. So let's go on here. This is our side of the bill for this same customer here. So we are charging our generation rate for this customer about 6 cents a kilowatt hour. I'll show you how we get to the math for how we get to that, or why that's a benefit for you. And so our charges for this month for just the generation component are $24.01. So I'll show you how the savings comes into play here. So we've got the PG&E generation credit of $35.17. I want to add up all of the credits and charges together so I can, you know, turn this into a math problem that makes sense. And since this is what PG&E would have otherwise charged, I'm going to go ahead and make this a positive number first, because I'm going to subtract the what Peninsula Clean Energy would have charged otherwise, or what you're getting benefit from Peninsula Clean Energy, and show you the difference. So the PG&E generation credit, $35.17. The Peninsula Clean Energy generation charges we saw there. PCIA, which is the extra surcharge that PG&E charges folks who take service from a third-party provider. And then the franchise fee surcharge, which is the pass-through to the local agencies. We got the total charges there. So being a Peninsula Clean Energy customer means that your total bundled generation charges are $33.39. That's what you're paying this month as a Peninsula Clean Energy customer total for all of the generation services combined, including all of the surcharges from PG&E. If you had been a PG&E customer for this month, you would have paid $35.17. So it's a little bit of a savings. Not a huge savings, a couple bucks, a little bit of savings. Peninsula Clean Energy charges less than PG&E. In this scenario, we've got a customer who's actually generating more electricity than they're consuming. So you see that the Peninsula Clean Energy electric generation charges are 0. Still got that line item there for the PG&E charges. This month it's $11.19 because it's a couple more extra days. But you look here on the summary total, and you can see for the most current month, it's a negative generation. So they generated extra electricity more than they consumed. And that's why you've got 0 generation charges from Peninsula Clean Energy. You've still got the same $11 a month, or $10 to $11 a month from PG&E, regardless if you're a net generator or net producer. For Peninsula Clean Energy, though, because you are a net generator, the difference here that I want to highlight is this generation credit that was previously a credit is now a charge, because PG&E is giving you credit up here. So they got to back out this is backwards math, right? 2 negatives make a positive. They got to back out the generation credit this way by adding it back in. And then instead of charging you the PCIA, they actually have to credit it. So the PCIA is negative, generation credit's positive, a little bit backwards. But on our side of the bill for Peninsula Clean Energy, you've got our costs here, right? $6.99 for the kilowatt hours you consumed. The credits here, 14 in this particular peak period. So there's an off-peak cost, and then there's a part peak credit, and then an on-peak credit. So they're being credited and charged at different rates depending on when you use or generate electricity. Charge, credit, and then here's that bonus credit that I was talking about, that 1 cent per kilowatt hour, because the total extra kilowatt hours that were generated this month in these two different credit periods was 242. So you've got a $2.40 bonus credit there. And so you've got a net generation credit of $36.62. It's going to go into the rolling total going forward. So just to do that math backwards again, we're going to now credit out the PG&E charges. And we've got the PG&E generation charges. So now we're going to show you the credits difference. So PG&E was going to pay you $37.91 during that period. Instead, Peninsula Clean Energy is paying you a total of $40.85 for that extra kilowatt hour period, or those extra kilowatt hours you generated during that billing cycle. The PCE payout is greater than the PG&E payout for a net generator. And then just as a sample here of a NEM 2.0 bill, which is a little bit more complicated. You've got these NBC usage adjustments here. I know somebody asked earlier about the NEM 2.0 bills. So just wanted to highlight this one's a little bit different. The math still works the same. These NBCs are still, they're calculated on their own. So I just wanted to sort of show this because this is a little bit different example that a lot of you probably have. So I'll stay open for questions. In general, if you've got follow-up solar net metering questions, you can direct them to me, Leslie, and you can send them to our general info box, which is info@peninsulacleanenergy.com. I've got a couple of people that monitor this box, so it's great for questions, general questions for net metering. And then, as I mentioned before, Sandra Benetti is our local staff person in Los Banos, and this is her direct email if you've got questions in general about, what's happening in Los Banos. You want to just talk to a Los Banos local about this program that's coming in. She's a great resource for that. And then it looks like I saw, is there a new question that came in? We've got a chat here. Ernesto has a question about how do we control the fees? I think you're asking probably about maybe those surcharge fees from PG&E, and it's a great question. We're constantly trying to negotiate those and work on those with our legislative process. It's a great way to sort of think about them, and I try to explain them as they're kind of like alimony charges, right? PG&E, bought this whole bunch of electricity, assuming that everyone was going to be their customer forever. And then, a community choice energy provider, comes up like PCE, and, the customers say, we want to resource our own energy. And so PG&E says, that's fine. But the state has said that we can't just offload all of those, legacy contracts that we purchased on your behalf to all of our leftover customers. So you're gonna have to pay a little bit, to start your own, sort of energy company, your own energy cooperative, because we got to keep our other customers whole. And that's what those PCIA fees are about in the larger sort of theoretical circle. It's like, okay, you want to separate, you don't want to be married anymore, that's great. But I made a big investment here on your behalf, and you got to pay for it if you want to leave. Now that should mean that you'd think that those fees would end eventually, and they do, but the timeline for them is very long because we're talking about very long-term contracts that are being offloaded now, like 20, 25-year agreements. But we are negotiating all the time. We've got a whole team of people that, works on this with the state legislature and in the regulatory environment to try to keep those fees lower. But we do incorporate them. We do factor them into our rate making. So they do change every year because they change with regards to rates and when people leave service and all kinds of stuff. But we do factor in those fees when we do our rate making right now. And so we do make sure to set our rates so that overall our customers are still getting a discount. And then what's going on with the new CPUC legislation? I think you're talking about the NEM 3.0. So I don't actually have a lot of answers about the NEM 3.0. I can tell you though that that decision is not going to happen at the end of this month. They've already said that it's not happening at this month. So they're still taking in, I think, feedback, and the new CPUC president is sort of absorbing, all of the feedback and stuff that they've been getting. So they are not going to make that decision on the NEM 3.0 program now. It's delayed probably at least a month or so. I do not know for sure though when that decision is going to come up. There will be a lot of activity or publicity around it though when it does come up, when they do schedule it. It was supposed to be on the January 27th meeting, and they took it off. So I can just tell you that. I'm going to stop sharing here. I think we got that up. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? And then, Ernesto, if you're concerned about the NEM 3.0, there's a lot of advocacy groups out there that you could, get involved with. I can tell you though, if you're a current solar customer and you installed your system anytime recently, like in the last, 5 years or so, you would be at minimum, 10 years away from having any impact from any of those decisions that get put in place. It wouldn't be great for anyone who hasn't installed solar and still wants to install it now, especially if they move forward with the, minimum fee for, for installing the solar system, which I think is the biggest issue. That's the one that people have the most, concern about, that it's going to be that $8 per kW surcharge. That's the one that seems to be causing the most heartache. But if there are any, if that does happen, those rules are only going to go into effect for people that either are brand new solar customers, or they've already aged out of their original interconnection agreement, meaning they've had their solar system longer than 15 years, which is, that was the rules that they wrote last one. That could still change. Let's see. Guillermo has a question here. Gotta love the new math. Okay. Do you have published rates for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, no. So you want to check on our rates? Yeah. So we publish our current rates. We don't have a rate schedule published yet for Los Banos. And the reason is because PG&E right now is going to be they're in the middle of their rate change. And so we're expecting a rate change from PG&E to happen March 1st, which means that we would, then adjust our rates, accordingly right after that. So we probably will not actually get a published rate schedule up for Los Banos until right before enrollment, because we're going to be working, the few weeks between when PG&E publishes their rate schedule to recalculating our rates, to getting it scheduled with our billing provider, to getting them up. And so our rate schedule that's going to be applicable for Los Banos is going to go up probably right before the enrollment starts in Los Banos, only because the PG&E rate change has been delayed. They had some of their rate changes go into effect for the transmission and distribution on January 1, but all of the generation related rate changes aren't happening now until at the earliest March 1st. You can look on our website to see the Peninsula clean energy rates for San Mateo County. And the San Mateo County rates are going to end up being different than the Los Banos rates because of the PTIA. So that alimony charge that I referenced before, it's going to be a different charge, for Los Banos, because that charge is set based on the year that you exit service. from the investor-owned utility. And so because Los Banos is exiting in 2021, their what's called the PCIA vintage is going to be different than the 2016 vintage for San Mateo County. So we're going to set our rates for San Mateo County based on the surcharges that are set for San Mateo County, and we're going to set rates for Los Banos based on the surcharges that are specific to Los Banos. But everybody is going to get a net discount of 5%. So our costs are actually going to be different. The Peninsula Clean Energy charges are going to be different between San Mateo County and Los Banos, but your all-in cost is going to be the same. It's going to be the same net 5% discount from PG&E. I hope that answers your question, Guillermo. Let's see, do we have anything else? My laptop, oh my God, I drained my battery so bad. For some reason, if my laptop spontaneously shuts down, I apologize. I had to go to an alternate location because my internet at home went really crazy, and I had to go to our office. So I ran to our office, and I forgot to bring my charger along with me. So anyways, the long and short of Guillermo is rates are based more or less on PG&E. What happens in our system is increased. Do we get permission? Yeah, so with the leases, if you're in a lease, you know, they set that lease for you based on what they projected probably PG&E's rates are going to be. So again, our rate structure is going to follow PG&E's rate structure overall, and then our rates that we charge are going to be less overall than what PG&E would have charged you. How that lines up with what you signed for your PPA lease, I do not know, because I don't know what kind of escalator your lease provider put in there. If there is an escalator, like it's going up, you know, 2% or 3% a year for you on your lease, that might be something we could talk more directly about offline. If you want to send me a direct email, and I can set up a conversation with you directly. So let's see, do we got anything else? I'm really glad you guys joined. I know we scheduled this, and we're hoping people were going to join. We sent out that message, and I know a lot of folks don't know who we are yet. So we're really glad that you came on and you joined us tonight. Again, we will have this recorded. We'll get it posted, and we'll share out on our website where it's recorded. But I think I'm pushing the gun here. Got 1% left on my laptop, so I should probably sign off. Sandra, I don't know if you want to say anything to the folks before we end the workshop.
I see some familiar names here, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email address was on the last slide, but it's sbenetti, so SBENETTI @PeninsulaCleanEnergy.com. Or you can give me a phone call. My phone number is 209-592-0870. I'm local here in Los Banos. I can meet with any of you guys. We can meet at City Hall. We can do a Zoom call, whatever you prefer. But I'll be available for any questions, or if anybody has anything they want to sit down and talk about.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so again, if you want to reach out to Sandra, she can meet with you in person at City Hall, and if we need to, we can Zoom in with me as well to that meeting. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful, and please reach out if you've got more questions, and look forward to providing you all electricity soon and welcoming you into the Peninsula Clean Energy family.
Real quick, I'm just going to repeat my phone number. Sounds like someone was asking for it to be repeated. So it's 209-592-0870. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.